Joint Committee will complete in order to ensure that we continue to have that good free flow of goods, so that Northern Ireland continues not just to be an integral part of the United Kingdom, but to have a unique opportunity to develop its economy as we leave the European Union after the transition period from January 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State will be aware that the conversation about our constitutional future is happening right across our community and every family in Northern Ireland. And of course, the Good Friday Agreement provides the mechanism for dealing with that constitutional future through a unity referendum. Will the Secretary of State tell us exactly what criteria he will use in the future to determine when a border poll will be called?
Secretary of State.
Well, I agree with the honourable gentleman in the sense of people are having a strong constitutional debate. We're seeing that across the United Kingdom. I encourage that. I think it is important that we all look at and discuss the strength and the importance of the Union. In Northern Ireland, we've seen about £2.4 billion of support because it's part of the UK as we're dealing with COVID. In terms of the honourable gentleman's specific question, the High Court, in a recent judicial review on this very matter, agreed that there is no legal requirement or that it's in the public interest for the government to set out a specific policy detailing any fixed criteria on the holding of a poll.
We now have a substantive question to Secretary of State from Sir Lane Saxby. Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with permission, I will answer questions 3 and 4 together. We have always, as a government, stressed the importance of the Union. The UK is, as a family of nations, and a union of people that works for everyone. We share cultural, social and economic ties that together make us safer, more secure and more prosperous. And as a government, we are absolutely committed to levelling up across the whole of the UK, taking every opportunity to strengthen the economy of Northern Ireland and its place in the United Kingdom. And we've shown this, as I say, through the £2.4 billion we have supplied and supporting Northern Ireland with through the fight against coronavirus, including the extra £900 million announced in the summer, the £200 million announced as part of the Winter Economy Plan.
So we head to North Devon with Sir Lane Saxby. Sir Lane Saxby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for his response. And does my right honourable friend agree with me that we need unfettered trade across the Irish Sea so that businesses like mine in North Devon can trade with the rest of the United Kingdom as usual?
State.
Absolutely. It is imperative that we ensure that the UK internal market continues to function effectively and efficiently at the end of the transition period. A strong UK internal market provides benefits to our domestic businesses and consumers, as my honourable friend outlines, and it gives confidence to our external trading partners as well. That's why we as a government have been very clear that there should be no tariffs on internal UK trade, that we want to deliver that unfettered access for Northern Ireland businesses. And of course, we are ensuring that unfettered access for goods moving from Northern Ireland to Great Britain as provided for in the protocol.
Brisley.
Speaker, can my right honourable friend confirm that this government is committing over £600 million towards growth deals that will help boost the recovery and ensure that we level up in every part of Northern Ireland?
Secretary of State.
Thank you. And yes, absolutely. We are committed to £617 million already to the City and Growth Deals programme in Northern Ireland. That's the largest across the United Kingdom, and it's together with the complementary Inclusive Future Fund. This commitment has been matched by the Northern Ireland Executive. So the funding total now is over £1.2 billion, a real opportunity to deliver on that levelling up programme. And these initiatives help to drive growth and innovation in the local economies, and they have a positive and lasting impact on employment, skills, infrastructure, tourism and regeneration that's to benefit of people across Northern Ireland and indeed across the United Kingdom.
We now come to Shadow Secretary of State, Louise Hay.
Mr. Speaker, Northern Ireland has had higher COVID rates than any other part of the United Kingdom in this second wave, yet their calls for furlough to be extended to cover lockdown have been ignored for almost 3 weeks until the government have finally caught up with the rest of the country. Now, despite repeated questioning, it is still totally unclear whether furlough will be extended for Northern Ireland and the other devolved administrations. So can the Secretary of State tell us, will Northern Ireland receive the full backing of the 80% furlough scheme should they extend or reintroduce restrictions?
Well, look, I would say to the honourable lady, obviously the furlough scheme that's been in place, the 80% runs and has run until the end of October. The government has announced that extension, so it continues for those businesses that need it through to the 2nd of December. The Treasury has said and been very clear about this, both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. We will keep these things under review because we want to make sure that we get the support there for people that need it. I think our track record has shown that we have done that. We continue to do that, and we'll continue to make sure the support is there for people across Northern Ireland and the businesses that need it.
Louise.
Speaker, it's just not good enough. Northern Ireland has been in lockdown since the 16th of October and has not had the furlough scheme in place. And the Prime Minister confirmed on Monday that furlough would be in place for the devolved administrations should they need it. This confusion reflects the complete contempt this government treats the devolved administrations with. Further to the commitments that have been made by this government and those made in New Decade, New Approach, which supported the reinstatement of the Northern Ireland Executive, significant sections of it have still not been delivered. Key among the promises was to increase police numbers to 7,500 in Northern Ireland. Will the Secretary of State now ensure that this promise is kept and the upcoming finance bill is used to deliver the funding for vital community policing?
Secretary of State.
Well, I would just say to the honourable lady, if in her own question, she sort of outlined the answer in the sense of furlough, because furlough has been in place and has been in place until the end of October. The Chancellor has extended it to the 2nd of December, so it covers that period that Northern Ireland has been in those extra restrictions. We've been working across with the devolved administration, the Northern Ireland Executive, throughout this period. I meet and speak regularly to the First and Deputy First Ministers. And that's on top of, as I say, the £2.4 billion of support that the government has put in place through the Barnett Consequential Formula to ensure that the Northern Ireland Executive has what it needs to support people and businesses through COVID. That's on top of furlough and the bounce back loans and etc. So I think it's very clear that we have put that support in place. What I would say to the honourable lady around the wider NDNA commitments, I think it is important we will continue, despite the challenges of COVID, to deliver on those commitments. We've been doing that. We've been having the joint board meetings, which I've instigated recently. Our next one will be in January, and we will continue to assess that programme of work of delivering NDNA. It's important that some of those things are done, particularly things like the Independent Fiscal Council that can give that transparency and confidence to people around expenditure on the Northern Ireland Executive. And I'm sure she will know that policing in Northern Ireland is devolved and is therefore a matter for the Northern Ireland Executive. But I would encourage them to make sure, and I know they work closely with PSNI from my conversations with the Chief Constable there, to ensure that they have the funding that they need.
We now come to the first of two questions from Sir Geoffrey Donaldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State will be aware that strengthening the union is also a matter at local community level, and he will know something of the excellent and transformational work of organisations like the Resurgam Trust in my constituency, the Schomburg Society and the Mourns and others. The Government gave a commitment to establish a culture and community fund as part of New Decade, New Approach, a fund that can help promote our heritage and culture at community level. What steps has the Secretary of State taken to implement that fund?
Secretary of State.
The honourable gentleman is absolutely right. We provided a further £2 billion of funding to implement the New Decade, New Approach agreement. We've ring-fenced £140 million for Northern Ireland's unique circumstances, and that fund can cover a range of projects supporting community and reconciliation initiatives to ensure that we are removing barriers and bringing people in Northern Ireland together. Now, the allocation of specific projects and funding for specific projects remains subject to final decisions, but we will be taking those forward by ministers through the joint board, which is now meeting regularly.
Sir Geoffrey.
Staying with the agreement, Secretary of State, the Government also gave a commitment to establish or to scope the establishment of a Northern Ireland hub here in London. And given the current economic situation, would the Secretary of State agree with me that such a hub is very important in terms of strengthening Northern Ireland's economic position and its trade with the rest of the United Kingdom?
Secretary of State.
Yes, absolutely agree with the point the honourable gentleman made. We are committed to the agreement and to scoping the potential for the Northern Ireland hub in London, something I believe would be good for Northern Ireland. I absolutely share that view. We will be working with the Northern Ireland Executive to explore the options for delivering such a hub, which would complement, I have to say, both the Invest Northern Ireland hub and the Northern Ireland office itself in making sure that Northern Ireland is fully and loudly represented at the heart of government and at the heart of the UK in our country. Absolutely.
Minister Walker.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll answer questions number 9 and 10 together. The UK government has provided unprecedented levels of support to families and employers throughout the COVID crisis. We want to see a prospering economy that reduces child poverty. Welfare, as you'll recognise, is a devolved matter in Northern Ireland, with no official statistical information yet available on its impact in the current year. However, the Northern Ireland Executive is committed to combating poverty via the anti-poverty and child poverty strategies, which were agreed in NDNA.
The first lockdown saw an 80% increase in universal credit claims in Northern Ireland. The 5-week wait for universal credit increases family debt and child poverty. With Christmas 7 weeks away and in the middle of the second lockdown, isn't now the time to end the 5-week delay?
Yeah. Well, I'd say to the Honourable Gentleman that nobody has to wait 5 weeks for a payment under the Universal Credit. Advances are a mechanism for getting claimants faster access to their entitlement, allowing claimants to receive 13 payments over 12 months for up to 12 months to repay the advance. Basic eligibility checks for advances are now completed remotely, allowing people to access the support they need despite COVID-19 restrictions. And the repayment time for advances has been extended already to 12 months. It will be further extended to 24 months from October 2021.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The legacy of the Troubles and the intergenerational trauma means Northern Ireland has some of the highest levels of disability, mental health issues and low pay in the entire UK. This means the £20 per week cut to universal credit planned for 2021 will hit Northern Ireland the hardest of all. Will the Minister urge his colleagues in the DWP to rule this out and stop families sliding into hardship?
Yeah. Well, I recognise the factors that the Honourable Lady points to, and I think it's important that there was extra funding under NDNA to recognise some of the unique factors facing Northern Ireland. Of course, that extra £20 a week has been put into universal credit to support people through this difficult time.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I say the Minister of State, we're ever mindful, of course, that Northern Ireland has given already £1.3 million for free school meals. Could the Minister further outline the impact of child poverty on the additional 100,000 children in Northern Ireland who are now on that list? That's according to the facts from the Department of Economy due to COVID. And if additional assistance or help will be available for households who are now excluded for tax credits if they have a third or a fourth child born after 2017 cut-off date. It's just how we can help these extra children who are now subject to child poverty.
Well, I have to say I don't recognise that estimate from the official figures, and the figures that the Executive have published suggest that the child poverty has decreased both in absolute and relative terms since 2015. But I absolutely recognise the need to provide extra support during this time. There is extra resource available to the Executive in terms of the £2.4 billion provided so far, and we will continue to work closely with them, recognising the £9 billion that has already been put into strengthening the welfare system across the UK to support families in Northern Ireland.
We have a substantive question to Minister Walker. Number 12.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK left the EU on the 31st of January 2020 on the basis of the deal set out in the withdrawal agreement, including the Northern Ireland Protocol, which will apply in all circumstances. The question now is whether we can agree a deeper trading relationship with the EU, similar to that which they have with Canada, or whether our trading arrangements will be more comparable to those the EU has with countries such as Australia. We have taken extensive steps in close cooperation with the EU to implement the protocol, and we continue to work with the Northern Ireland Executive and a wide range of stakeholders across Northern Ireland to deliver this by the end of the transition period.
Let's head to Belfast South with Claire Hannah. Claire Hannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, the health service in Northern Ireland is facing incredible pressure with the pandemic, with warnings from some hospitals about running out of beds and key supplies for patients with COVID and non-COVID patients. He'll know that our health service relies on medicines from across the EU and on cooperation with the health service in the Republic of Ireland that's made possible through the EU common framework. Would the Minister agree with me that the disruptive end of the transition, right in the middle of this battle with the pandemic and winter pressures, is bad enough, and that leaving without a deal would be downright dangerous for people's health in Northern Ireland?
Minister.
Well, let me agree with the Honourable Lady about the huge importance of the National Health Service, which benefits Northern Ireland enormously, and the enormous importance of access of supplies to medicines, both through the Republic of Ireland and from the rest of the UK. It is important that Northern Ireland's position and the supplies of goods to Northern Ireland are protected by the protocol, and that unfettered access is delivered, both in terms of north-south movements and in terms of access to the rest of the United Kingdom, which provides crucial support to Northern Ireland.
Let's head to the chair of the Select Committee, Salmon Hoare in North Dorset. Salmon Hoare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I wish you a happy first anniversary in the chair. Criminality, smuggling and modern slavery, my honourable friend knows, cannot be the winners in a no-deal Brexit scenario exit at the end of this year. Can he assure me that the importance of these issues with regards to Northern Ireland are well understood at the heart of government, and that he and the Secretary of State are doing all that they can to combat them going forward?
Absolutely, and I recognise the Chair of the Select Committee is doing important inquiry into these issues, but think I've written to him with some provisional initial written evidence and look forward to giving more detailed evidence in due course. The protocol does preserve huge gains of the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement by removing the major security risks associated with any requirement for checks at the land border and providing a practical solution to avoid such processes on the island of Ireland. All the way through the implementation of the protocol, we've remained very aware of other potential security implications, including in the event of a non-negotiated outcome with the EU. We have well-developed and well-rehearsed plans in place and believe that the excellent working relationship between the Police Service of Northern Ireland and An Garda Síochána will continue, but I absolutely recognise the importance of the issues that he raises.
We now come to Shadow Minister Currans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government Minister, Lord Agnew, said that there had been a head-in-the-sand approach by traders to the Brexit changes to come, but less than 60 days till the protocol comes into force. The IT system to underpin custom declarations is not fully operational, the border operating model has not been published, and the port infrastructure needed is now rated undeliverable by the department in charge. This is a monumental failure of preparation, but it's not the fault of business. It is the fault of this government, the only people to have their head in the sands. So will he now apologise to Northern Ireland businesses for the worry, the stress and the additional burdens they are having to bear?
I absolutely recognise the importance of providing certainty and providing information to Northern Ireland businesses. We've set up the Business Engagement Forum and have been engaging with businesses large and small through that in order to provide them with the detail. But as she will recognise, talks are ongoing at the Joint Committee, and what we need to make sure we can do is to deliver the smoothest access, to protect unfettered access as we're doing through the UK Internal Markets Bill, and to deliver on the protocol for those businesses to provide the certainty that they need.
We now come to SNP spokesperson Kirstin Oswald.
Mr. Speaker, the leaders of Scottish Episcopal Church, Church of Scotland, Roman Catholic Church in Scotland, United Reformed Church Scotland, Methodist Church Scotland and Quakers in Scotland are united in their concern at the UK Government's actions on Brexit, with its plan to break international law, acting on devolved matters against the wishes of devolved administrations and placing the peace of Northern Ireland in peril, a concern they say is shared by church leaders across the Irish Sea. What can the Minister say to reassure these representatives of Scotland's faith communities that his government is listening to anyone as it careens forward on its misguided path?
Hear, hear.
Reiterate to the Honourable Lady the answer I gave earlier, that we have already left the European Union with a deal, and that we want to make sure that we deliver on our commitments under the protocol, absolutely protecting our commitment to the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement. I'm afraid some of these people may have been misled by some statements from the SNP rather than raising concerns about what is the reality of the government's intention.
Dr. James Davis.
16, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government is building a stronger and fairer economy for the future. To support the aim, the Prime Minister has announced an independent union connectivity review, which is being led by Sir Peter Hendy. The review will consider how our connectivity by road, rail, air and sea across the whole of the UK can support economic growth, increase quality of life and strengthen our union.
We now go back to Dr. James Davis.
I thank my honourable friend for that answer. The North Wales Mainline Railway connects Great Britain across the Irish Sea and is vital for travel. So will my honourable friend work with the Department for Transport and the Union Connectivity Review to see this line enhanced for the benefit of my constituents and the people of Northern Ireland?
Well, my honourable friend speaks up for North Wales effectively, and he makes an important point. The government will engage positively with the Union Connectivity Review, which will look at how we can improve the transport landscape across the whole of the UK, including connections between Wales and Northern Ireland. And levelling up across the whole of this United Kingdom is an absolute priority for this government.
Gregory Campbell.
Input can the Minister say he's had to the Union Connectivity Review, and how tangible does he expect the outcome to be in terms of promoting and cementing the business relationships and the cultural relationships across the whole of the United Kingdom?
Well, the honourable gentleman is right to point out that the connectivity is crucial to business, and as such it won't surprise him that both the Secretary of State and myself have met with the Department of Transport, Cabinet Office and other groups with the Union Connectivity Review to make clear the importance of this for Northern Ireland.
Jacob Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apologies. The Government is committed to meeting our target of net zero emissions by 2050. The Secretary of State and I regularly engage with businesses across the manufacturing sector and to discuss how the green economy is an opportunity to drive economic growth and reduce emissions in Northern Ireland. We're pleased that the Northern Ireland Executive has endorsed the extension of the Environment Bill to Northern Ireland and have pledged to pass the Climate Change Act.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his answer. I know he's a keen advocate of the hydrogen economy, as am I. And manufacturers like Wrightbus in Northern Ireland are leading the way in the production of hydrogen buses, a perfect example of how we can decarbonise public transport. Does the Minister agree with me that greater investment in the hydrogen economy is not only essential for our net zero targets, but in building jobs in every part of this United Kingdom?
Well, let me say absolutely yes, and congratulate the honourable gentleman for the work that he does with the all-party parliamentary group on hydrogen. Northern Ireland has proven expertise with hydrogen electric power in the bus sector, and we've seen the introduction of the world's first hydrogen electric double-decker bus by Wrightbus this year. We continue to support and promote hydrogen technologies in Northern Ireland and right across the UK, and the UK government has already invested £121 million into UK hydrogen technology. We're actively exploring with UK government departments and with the executive how best to secure specific funding for hydrogen production in Northern Ireland.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the Minister will join with me in welcoming the acquisition of Bombardier in Northern Ireland by Spirit Aerosystems, and he also well understands the importance of aerospace to the Northern Ireland economy. But the aerospace sector does need to transition to the needs of the green economy. So will the Northern Ireland Office be a powerful advocate in government for a substantial investment in green technologies across the aerospace sector throughout the UK?
The honourable gentleman makes a very powerful point. I very much welcome the news that Spirit Aerosystems has acquired Shorts. I recently met with union representatives who outlined their concerns about the immediate challenges facing the aerospace industry, and this investment in such a major local employer of high-quality jobs is an important step in providing certainty to the company and its employees at a difficult time for the industry. Of course, there is much more to do, and the honourable member is absolutely right that innovation and green investment have a very important part to play in the recovery phase, and the UK government will be doing everything it can, working alongside the executive to support a strong economic recovery and innovation in the green economy in Northern Ireland.
20.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'll answer questions 20 and 21 together. The Government continues to engage regularly with the Northern Ireland Executive as we get on with delivering the protocol and preparing for the end of the transition period. As well as working with the Executive, we are working with port authorities, district councils and other stakeholders in Northern Ireland to deliver protocol requirements at pace. We are also continuing discussions with the EU in the Joint Committee, informed by close working with the Executive to secure a pragmatic approach to agri-food checks.
Karen McCarthy.
Last month, the operators of Northern Ireland's 4 ports told Stormont that facilities to check goods arriving from Great Britain wouldn't be in place by the end of transition. They also had concerns about the IT system, potential delays and a lack of clarity from HMRC. This is an absolute shambles with 8 weeks to go. Who does the Minister hold responsible for that?
I'd say to the Honourable Lady that the work is continuing. As we previously set out, we are expanding some existing entry points for agri-food controls in Northern Ireland, building on what already happens at ports like Larne and Belfast to ensure that new processes are as streamlined and efficient as possible. We continue to work closely with the Executive, with port authorities and district councils and the other stakeholders in Northern Ireland to take this work forward at pace. But you will recognise some of these issues are also subject to ongoing discussions at the Joint Committee.
Heading up to Manchester for the final question from Tony Lloyd. Tony Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has a rightful reputation of being a decent individual, but will he not now apologise to businesses that so close to the beginning of the next year, so close to the new regime coming in. Businesses still don't know what regime they're going to operate under. Isn't an apology now absolutely necessary from this government to the businesses in Northern Ireland?
Minister.
Let me say first what a pleasure it is to see the right honourable gentleman, even if only on the screen, and welcome him back to the House, certainly from my perspective. In the last 3 months, we published operational guidance to Northern Ireland businesses covering customs, SPS and manufactured goods on the 7th of August, announced a £200 million trader support scheme service to support traders in Northern Ireland to meet the requirements of the protocol, announced over £150 million investment in IT systems needed to operate the protocol's requirement, and made progress on the recruitment and training of new staff to operate the protocol. But I absolutely recognise the need to provide greater certainty, and we will continue to do that both through the Business Engagement Group and through our work on the Joint Committee.
We now come to questions to the Prime Minister. And we start with Andrew Jones.
Question one, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole House is talking about the result of a heavily contested election. And indeed, it is a year ago to the day, Mr. Speaker, that you were elected Speaker. And may I, on behalf of all members, wish you therefore a very happy anniversary, and thanks to you, Mr. Speaker, for making the speakership great again. Mr. Speaker, this morning thank you, Mr. Speaker, I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others in addition to my duties in this House. I shall have further such meetings later today.
Andrew Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The citywide testing trial starting in Liverpool on Friday using the new lateral flow tests will cut the time to get results, cut the spread of the virus by identifying people who are infected but not showing symptoms, and vastly reduce both the number of people and time involved in isolating. So the benefits to the NHS, to schools and to business are profound. When does the Prime Minister think the results from this trial will be available and the benefits of this extended across the UK?
I thank my honourable friend. He's absolutely right, and I can tell him that the pilot is planned to last for approximately 2 weeks, and we will keep the House updated on the results as they are evaluated.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start with the elections in the United States? Whatever the results, will the Prime Minister join me in saying that it's not for a candidate to decide which votes do and don't count, or when to stop counting? The next president must be the free and fair choice of the American people. Can I also express my revulsion at the terrorist attacks in Nice and Vienna? I'm sure I speak for the whole House in saying our thoughts are with all of those affected. And of course, Mr. Speaker, can I join the congratulations on your one-year anniversary? Turning now, if I may, to COVID-19. On the 21st of September, when the government's scientific advisers indicated that a circuit break would bring the virus back under control, the number of people that day who tragically lost their lives to COVID-19 was 11. The Prime Minister ignored that advice. On Monday, 42 days later, the number of people who tragically lost their lives to COVID-19 was 397. That's a staggering 35-fold increase. Does the Prime Minister understand the human cost of his delay in acting?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in answer to his opening question, of course, we don't comment as a UK government on the democratic processes of our friends and allies, and I don't think he would. I don't think, in all seriousness, he would expect otherwise. But, Mr. Speaker, turning to the point about COVID and the difficult decision that this House has to face tonight, I think I speak for many honourable members across this House when I say I don't think any government would want to impose these measures lightly, or any parliament would want to impose these measures lightly on the people of this country. And it was always right, Mr. Speaker, to pursue a local and a regional approach, as our scientific advisers said. And I'll tell you why, Mr. Speaker, because that approach, that regional approach, actually was showing signs of working, and still is showing signs of working. It did get the R down, the transmission rate down lower than it would otherwise have been, Mr. Speaker, but we have to face the reality that, in common with many other countries in this part of the world, we are now facing a surge in that virus, which this House must now tackle with the measures we've outlined. They will expire, as honourable members know, on December the 2nd. I hope very much the members opposite will support them tonight.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure nobody wants a lockdown, but it is a question of timing. Had the decision been taken a few weeks ago to put in place a circuit break, it could have been done for 2 to 3 weeks and taken advantage of schools being closed over half-term. Now the Prime Minister's proposed lockdown will be for at least 4 weeks. That means businesses will be closed for longer and in the critical run-up to Christmas. Does the Prime Minister understand the economic cost of his delay in acting?
Mr. Speaker, and it's precisely because we understand the economic cost, and it's precisely because we understand the social, the psychological damage of lockdowns that it was right, Mr. Speaker, to go for the local and the regional solution that was supported by, and indeed supported by many members, indeed I think by the right honourable gentleman, as long as it was useful to him for a while. That was the right approach. But what I can tell him, Mr. Speaker, is that at the expiry of this period on December the 2nd, by then, as I said in answer to my honourable friend earlier on, we will be rolling out across this country new types of testing on a scale never seen before, beginning this week, as I've said, in Liverpool, enabling us to detect asymptomatic cases, Mr. Speaker, and that's crucial, because 70% of the transmission is taking place, as the House knows, between people who have no symptoms. And that will enable us to find new ways on a mass scale to break the chains of transmission. I want to thank particularly the Labour leadership of Liverpool for their cooperation, a manner of cooperation that I commend to the benches opposite.
Yes, Tom. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's delay in acting is a huge failure of leadership, and it's no good saying that there was support for the tier system. As he well knows, I looked at the evidence and made a decision 3 weeks ago that the right thing was for a circuit break. And I don't buy the argument, I don't think anybody does, that the facts suddenly changed this weekend. The direction of travel and the number of infections, hospital admissions and tragically deaths have been clear for weeks. But we are where we are. Millions of people across the country are really concerned about the restrictions that will come into force at midnight tonight. And I accept that we've all got a duty to pull together and try to make this lockdown work. So I just want to ask some basic and direct questions on behalf of those millions of people. First, will the lockdown end on the 2nd of December, come what may, or will it depend on the circumstances at the time? People need to know that.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for the support that he's now offering, and I can answer him very simply. As the House knows, and as I informed him repeatedly on Monday, these measures, these autumn measures to combat the surge, will expire automatically, Mr. Speaker, on December the 2nd, and we will then, I hope very much, be able to get this country going again, to get businesses, to get shops open again in the run-up to Christmas. But that depends on us all doing our bit now to make sure that we get the R down. I've no doubt that we can, and that we'll be able to go forward from December the 2nd with a very, very different approach. But, of course, it will be up to the House of Commons to decide thereafter what to do.
Mr. Speaker, I accept there will be a vote in the House. That doesn't tell us anything. That's the process. But I want to press the Prime Minister. Is he saying that if by the 2nd of December the R rate, the infection rate, has not come below 1, and therefore on the 2nd of December the infection rate is still rising on the 2nd of December, is he saying that come what may, we will come out of lockdown with infection rates going up on the 2nd of December? That doesn't seem sensible to me.
Mr. Speaker, it is thanks to the efforts of the British people that the R is now currently only just above 1 as it is. And we are doing the right and the prudent thing at the right time to get that infection rate down. And these measures, as I've said repeatedly to the House, Mr. Speaker, will expire on the 2nd of December. If he's now saying he wants to protract them beyond the 2nd of December, then perhaps he should make his position clear.
I just want some basic honesty, and this is serious. If the infection rate, we've got to look the public in the eye. If the infection rate is still going up on the 2nd of December, it is madness to come out of the system back to the tiered system when we know the one thing the tiered system can't cope with is an R rate above 1. That's the basic point. We can come back to it on the 2nd of December, as we always do, Mr. Speaker, but that's the point I'm making. The one thing we know a circuit breaker or lockdown does do is to buy time. And the Prime Minister needs to use that time to fix, test and trace. And I know he'll talk about the capacity of 500,000, what's going on in Liverpool is world-beating, etc. But we've been going round and round in circles on this. Mr. Speaker, the latest figures show that 113,000 contacts were not even reached, and that's just in 1 week. Only 20% of those who should be isolating are doing so, and the majority of people still don't get results in 24 hours. So can the Prime Minister give a straight answer? What's he going to do in the next 4 weeks to fix this? Because if he doesn't, we'll be back here again.
Mr. Speaker, with greatest respect to the right honourable gentleman who has stood up and said that I will brag about NHS test and trace and their achievement of 500,000, a target of capacity of 500,000. You know, I think I'm perfectly willing to accept the failings of NHS test and trace, Mr. Speaker. Of course I am. And of course I take full responsibility for the frustrations people have experienced with that system. But to go from 3,000 tests a day, 2,000 tests a day to 500,000 is a quite remarkable feat. It's the biggest diagnostics exercise this country has ever carried out. And, Mr. Speaker, they are helping to drive down the R. They are doing, in my view, an absolutely invaluable job, whatever the difficulties they face. What we now need to do is to come together as a nation, briefly if we can, to put aside party political wrangling and point scoring, and work together, as I think he will tonight, work together to support this package, to get the R down and allow us to go forward in a different way with the mass testing that I've outlined from December the 2nd.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister must see that if 4 out of 10 of those that should be contacted are not being contacted, we've got a problem in the system that needs to be fixed in the next 4 weeks. Finally, I want to ask about care homes, which of course were hit so badly in the first wave of this pandemic. And can I pay tribute, Mr. Speaker, to all those working in care homes who've given such dedication and commitment in the toughest of circumstances, and we owe it to them not to repeat the mistakes of the first wave. But, Prime Minister, as we face the second wave, there's an increasing concern about the emotional well-being of those in care homes and their families if all visits are stopped. It must be possible to find a way, perhaps a dedicated family member scheme of some sort, to allow some safe visits to alleviate the huge fears of isolation and despair across the coming months. Will the Prime Minister work cross-party to find a scheme that will work for those in care and their families?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the new guidance on care homes and visiting relatives safely, because the point he makes is incredibly important, is going to be announced today to try to strike the right balance between people's real need to see their loved ones and obviously the risk of spreading the disease in care homes. We're going to be publishing some guidance about how that can be done today. And I'm grateful to his offer to work collaboratively, but I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that the House will generally have noted that he has used this crisis as an opportunity to make political capital, to have what I think a shadow spokesman called a good crisis. A good crisis, Mr. Speaker. Well, can I commend a different approach? Because he's attacked the government's strategy. Can I commend a different approach? Because the former Labour leader, the Right Honourable former member for Sedgefield, who is not as fashionable on those benches as he once was or should be, has written a good, not with all of them, Mr. Speaker, perhaps on the front bench, but not with all of them. He's written a good piece in today's Daily Mail, Mr. Speaker, in which he broadly supports this government's strategy, praising UK drugs companies for what they're doing, supporting our search for a vaccine, and supporting mass testing in Liverpool, which he deprecates, Mr. Speaker. And I think what he should do is actually take a leaf out of the Blair book, Mr. Speaker. And by the way, I can tell him that Tony Blair would not have spent 4 years in the same shadow cabinet as Jeremy Corbyn, standing shoulder to shoulder with him.
Nick Fletcher.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the position the government is in today, and although this is desperately hard for people and businesses, I agree that it is the right decision. However, once we are through this period, I believe it is business that will restore the economy. Therefore, does my right honourable friend agree with me that easing congestion in the south east with the border control point in Don Valley would help trade flow through the country and level up the north following the transition period?
Prime Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right, and I can tell him that the Department of Transport is already engaged on this matter, and I'm sure would be happy to meet him and representatives from the iPort that he describes.
Right, let us head up to the leader of the SNP up in Scotland with Ian Blackford. Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to take the opportunity to send my best wishes to our friends in the US during this anxious time. Donald Trump claimed an unsupported victory and major fraud, with millions of legitimate ballots left to count. And I hope the Prime Minister will join me in condemning his actions this morning. Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the Prime Minister agreed access to the furlough scheme at 80% for Scotland if lockdown restrictions require it. Subsequently, a number of his ministers have rolled back on that promise, and the Scottish Government have not received any detail on what the commitment means in practice. Today is the Prime Minister's opportunity to clear up this mess of his own government's making. Will Scotland receive full 80% furlough and self-employed payments on current eligibility whenever it is requested by the Scottish Government in the months ahead?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I hesitate to accuse the right honourable gentleman of failing to listen to what I said on Monday, but I think he heard exactly what I said. I gave a commitment, then I in no way budge from that commitment. Furlough is a UK-wide scheme. It's helped save, I think, about 10 million jobs in this country, including about 1 million in Scotland, Mr. Speaker.
Ian Blackford.
Well, of course, what the Prime Minister said on Monday is that if the devolved administrations asked for it, then it would be granted. That was a direct answer that he gave to a question. So can I ask whether, Mr. Speaker, the Scottish Government, who've been waiting for clarity on whether Scotland will receive additional money as the result of increased spending from English local government, and is there also no clarity on whether the unlimited payments for business support in England will be made available on a similar demand-led basis? Will the Prime Minister clarify these 2 points now and commit to confirm in writing to the Scottish Government today that the access to the furlough scheme will be there if they need it?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, I think perhaps the most efficient thing I can tell the right honourable gentleman is that my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, will be making a general statement, as you can imagine, Mr. Speaker, about all the support, all the provisions that we're making for this latest phase to tackle the autumn surge of coronavirus tomorrow. And what I can tell him, just to repeat the points that I've made on Barnett consequential, so there's already been 7.2 billion gone to help in 7.2 billion, I should say, for Scotland. And look, Mr. Speaker, we're going to support people in Scotland and throughout the UK during this crisis.
Stuart Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister recognise the importance of places of worship to my constituents in Wolverhampton and the rest of the country? And does he agree they should open as soon as practically possible? And will he commend all the work that has been done in these places to make them COVID secure?
Mr. Speaker, first I thank my honourable friend for campaigning for places of worship in the way that he does. Second, I'm so deeply sorry that these restrictions have to be placed right now, but we will work as hard as we can and as fast as we can to make sure that we allow them to come back in the way to worship in the way that they want from December the 2nd, and that's why I hope that the House will pass this package of measures tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If every vote is counted in the US election, it is likely that Joe Biden will be the victor. The Prime Minister does have a major challenge to build relationships to any incoming administration. So therefore, in light of Joe Biden's entirely correct analysis of the impact on the Good Friday Agreement of the Internal Market Bill, How quickly is the Prime Minister going to recognise the inevitable and remove those clauses from the bill?
Mr. Speaker, the UK Internal Market Bill, which has cross-party support, is a vital part of the armature, the skeletal structure of the whole UK economy as we leave the European Union, and it ensures that goods placed on the market, services placed are available throughout the UK on the same terms. It's absolutely vital for our country, and he should support it.
That's right, Garvey.
Mr. Speaker, with the UK terror threat levels now at severe following the horrific attacks in Paris and now in Vienna by cowardly Islamic State terrorists, the whole House joins the Prime Minister's heartfelt solidarity with our French and Austrian allies. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that here in the UK we must redouble our support for anti-extremism programmes like Prevent? And does the Prime Minister share my concerns over UK-based TV channels like Islam TV, which this week was just fined by Ofcom for giving airtime to extremist preachers who justify anti-Semitism, wife-beating and FGM?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend is absolutely right, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with France, as I've told President Macron, shoulder to shoulder with Austria, as I've told Chancellor Kurz, in our joint war against this abominable ideology, and together we will defeat it, Mr. Speaker.
Gareth Thomas.
I hope, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor now regret their decision not to extend free school meals to cover half-term, and will join the richly deserved praise for all those community groups, councils and indeed businesses who stepped up to stop our nation's children going hungry last week. So will the Prime Minister now commit to do the right thing at Christmas and extend free school meals to cover that period too?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's, yes, I do indeed congratulate all the voluntary organisations. I'm proud that have stepped on. I'm proud that this government has also helped to fund them to the tune of billions of pounds, another, not just the £9 billion increase in universal credit, but of course an extra billion going, 1.1 billion going to help councils. Mr. Speaker, this government will ensure that no child goes hungry this Christmas, this winter, thanks to any inattention or inactivity by government. And never forget, Mr. Speaker, that it was the Conservative government that instituted free school meals for 5, 6 and 7-year-olds after all the years Labour were in power.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will remember watching the new electric London taxi being made in my constituency, and he'll be pleased to hear that the companies this week started production of a van. But this year has been a tough one for the automotive sector, with manufacturing output at its lowest level for 25 years. It would benefit massively from the certainty of knowing that components and vehicles will be able to move free of tariffs between the UK and countries of the European Union from the new year. Can he provide good news about concluding a deal with the EU to the sector, its workers and their families?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I do indeed believe that such a deal would be massively in the interests of our EU friends and partners as well as anybody else. But that is, of course, up to them. What I can tell him is that we are supporting green technology of all kinds, Mr. Speaker, particularly hybrid and battery vehicles, and we've just put another £49 million into grants for exactly the kind of vehicles that he and I have inspected and driven together, so that this country can bounce back greener, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government will be aware of the staggering increase in domestic abuse through the pandemic, with Refuge reporting a 50% increase in their use of their hotline. Meanwhile, the Employers' Initiative on Domestic Abuse, which its predecessor supports, warn of huge risks by home working to many people facing domestic abuse. Domestic abuse has no borders, so can the Prime Minister ensure that the UK government, before a second English lockdown begins, produces a well-resourced plan for addressing domestic abuse? And will he join me and South Wales Police and members from across this House in himself becoming a member of the Employers' Initiative on Domestic Abuse to send a clear signal that no one should have to live with violence in their homes?
Mr. Speaker, he's entirely right in the sense that although the absolute numbers haven't gone up perhaps in the way that we'd feared, what we're unquestionably seeing is repeat victimisation in domestic context. It is intolerable. As the House knows, we've set up helplines to tackle it. We're investing in refuges in IDVAs and independent domestic violence advisors. It is absolutely crucial that we tackle the scourge of domestic abuse and that we also deal with the consequences, the mental health consequences for the victims, and that's why we're investing massively in mental health and mental health charities as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An independent study published recently suggests that the writing ability of Year 7 pupils is some 22 months behind expectations. And my right honourable friend will know that it is the life chances of the most disadvantaged that are hit hardest when schools close. These are the very children, quite rightly, that we have said are an absolute priority for this government. So can I ask my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, for an assurance that first, we will do whatever it takes to make up for lost ground, and second, we will never again contemplate closing our schools?
I thank my right honourable friend, and he's completely right about the paramount importance of keeping our schools open. But what I will also say to him is that out of this crisis has been born at least one, I think, potentially innovative idea that can really help exactly the types of kids, pupils that he's talking about, and that is one-on-one tutoring of the kind that we've been able to support with our catch-up premiums and our national tutoring programme. And I want to see, as we go forward, as we come out of this pandemic, I want to see us keeping up with one-on-one tutoring, because I believe it can make a huge difference to the confidence of children and to their academic attainment.
Sam Terry.
Speaker, let me put on record my congratulations on your first year in office, and thanks to so many young MPs you've given across in the past year. Mr. Speaker, SAGE recommended a circuit breaker over 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. The Prime Minister has clearly not listened to scientific or medical advice for more than 6 weeks. What will the Prime Minister say to the 12,000 people's families who will die by Christmas, that's been forecast by SAGE? What will you say to them, Mr. Prime Minister?
I listen to a huge range of scientific advice, and indeed there are eminent scientists and epidemiologists who say that you shouldn't do any kind of lockdowns, any kind of measures like this at all. I'm David Nabarro, who I esteem greatly, of the World Health Organization, for instance. But you have to take a balanced decision. You have to strike a judgment about when the right moment is. You have to balance the effect. He talks about the long-term effects on people's lives. You have to strike make a balanced judgment about the effects on people's mental health, on their livelihoods, on their prospects, the prospects of young people, and the importance of saving lives and protecting our NHS. And that's the balance we're trying to strike tonight. I hope you will support it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a few short weeks, we end the transition period with the European Union. May I ask the Prime Minister to confirm that the transition team will endeavour to keep Dover clear from traffic gridlock, and that work will continue at pace on the proposed upgrade to the A2 between Whitfield and Dover's Eastern Docks?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend, and I congratulate her on her campaign for the people of Dover, and I can tell her that Highways England is now, I think thanks to her lobbying, developing plans to improve Brenley Corner Junction and access into Dover along the remaining single carriageway sections of the A2 from Lyddon, Mr. Speaker.
Heading up to Scotland with Carol Monaghan. Carol Monaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked the Prime Minister on Monday whether furlough would be available to different nations and regions of the UK as and when required. His response, which he has repeated today, was furlough is a UK-wide scheme. Yes, we understand that. However, to the Honourable Member for Murray, he responded, if other parts of the UK decide to go into measures that require the furlough scheme, then of course it is available to them. Millions of people need clarification on this from the Prime Minister. Will 80% furlough be available to specific regions beyond the 2nd of December if they need to lock down because of rising infections?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I hesitate to accuse the honourable lady of not listening to what I've just said, but I want to repeat that the furlough is a UK-wide scheme. Of course, it will continue to be available to the people of Scotland, and for any further elucidation on the details of the entire package of support that this government is bringing for the people of the entire UK, I direct her to what my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, is going to say tomorrow.
Mr. Skidmore. A potential vaccine for COVID provides us all with hope, Mr. Speaker. Hope that is thanks to investment in research and development. The Prime Minister has pledged more money for research than any of his predecessors put together to deliver on his vision of the United Kingdom as a global science superpower. Does he agree that maintaining this government's commitment to spend 2.4% of GDP on research and development by 2027 will also be essential for that vision?
Mr. Speaker, you've asked for speed in my answers. The answer is basically yes. But I can also reiterate that we're committed to the 2.4% and to increasing public investment in R&D by 22 billion by 2024-2025.
John Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent, Wiki Wilson, is one of the excluded. From nothing, he built a private coach business with 18 employees and $1 million in turnover until COVID. Coaches aren't classed as either tourism or leisure, so he can't get any grants, and the banks won't accept his assets for loan guarantees. Buses may be just a photo op to the Prime Minister, but they matter in the north, and also in Northern Ireland, which has just announced a special fund. Will the Prime Minister do the same, and will he write to me to explain how we can protect those threatened by personal debt guarantees?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very, very interested in what the honourable lady says, because, as she knows, this government is investing massively in I think, 5,000 low-carbon buses. I'd be interested to know what type of buses or coaches she's talking about, and very, very interested to hear the details of the company that she rightly represents. But that company should be eligible for bounce-back loans, should be eligible for all sorts of support. And since she's shaking her head, can I invite her to write to me with details of the needs of that company? Now, I'll do my best to oblige her.
Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Northern communities, including my Cheadle constituents, have already been subject to restrictions for months, having a disproportionate effect on northern livelihoods. The importance of the Prime Minister's levelling up agenda has never been starker. So today, can I ask him if he would fast-track infrastructure spending in the north, including Northern Powerhouse Rail and a new train station in Cheadle? And will the government, with northern MPs and business leaders, formulate a northern economic recovery plan to make sure our region comes out of this pandemic stronger than ever?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can certainly confirm that we're going to go ahead with Northern Powerhouse Rail, and I can tell her in addition that Cheadle will receive at least £500,000 from the Towns Fund to support their local high street and local community.
Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Midlothian's got a long and proud mining heritage, from the Lady Victoria to Bilson Glen and Monkton Hall, so I very much welcomed the announcement from the Scottish Government last week of a general pardon to those criminalised for events of the 1984 miners' strike. There are still unanswered questions which fall to the remit of the UK Government, including issues around political interference. Will the Prime Minister commit today to undertaking a UK-wide independent review to ensure the experiences of miners are fully understood, to bring reconciliation to miners and police officers, and to try to heal the wounds of the past?
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman. I think he's raising the 1983 minus, or the early 1980s at any rate. I would be obliged to him if he would send me further detailed particulars of the concerns he has, and I will do my best to address them.
Shelbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will my right honourable friend join me in thanking the teachers across Elmet and Rothwell for keeping schools open this term? And does he share my frustration that half of the laptops provided by him to Leigh City Council for distribution to the most vulnerable learners in the city remain in the storeroom at Leeds Civic Hall? What can be done to get the Labour Council to pull their socks up?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is indeed. I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and that is indeed disappointing because over 2,500 laptops and tablets and 400 routers were delivered to Leeds City Council for disadvantaged 10-year-old pupils, and I think we should, I will do whatever I can to spring those laptops from the cupboard as fast as I can, Mr. Speaker.
Let's head up to Manchester, see if they're in the cupboard with Jeff Smith. Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, the Prime Minister was asked why people in Greater Manchester were offered less support under Tier 3 than is available under the new restrictions. And he said that these are different measures, so required different support packages. But if your workplace is closed under Tier 3 restrictions, you lose your income just as surely as if your workplace is closed under the new national lockdown. So why should people receive less help from the government if we go back into Tier 3 after December the 2nd?
Minister.
But, Mr. Speaker, they're not going to, and the furlough scheme, as he knows, was extended until the end of October. We're putting in measures now to support people across the whole of the UK throughout this period to the 2nd of December, and that's the right thing to do, Mr. Speaker. We're putting our arms around the people of this country to get them through the pandemic and beyond, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that the Prime Minister will soon receive a recommendation from the Departments of Health and Transport to enable quarantine periods to be cut for those passengers that have tested COVID negative. Can I ask the Prime Minister when a decision is likely to be made and if he will look favourably on this proposal to allow the aviation industry to get back to its rightful place in this country?
Well, I thank my honourable friend. He's right to lobby for the aviation industry. This country has the third biggest aviation industry in the world, Mr. Speaker. It's currently having a terrible, terrible time, and my sympathies are very much with all the employees involved. One of the benefits of getting PCR testing up to 500,000 a day, Mr. Speaker, is we do have new possibilities for testing of all kinds across the country. We will be bringing forward further measures and further proposals as soon as they are finalised, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, in my short time as an MP for the City of Durham, Dominic Cummins has fatally undermined public health messaging, has historic planning violations exposed, and has shortchanged us with an unpaid council tax bill of up to £50,000. Will the Prime Minister condemn this continued flouting of the rules, or does he have a blind spot that even a trip to Bonnet Castle can't fix?
Mr. Speaker, I think what has possibly undermined people's confidence and understanding of what the government is trying to do is the constant party political point scoring and attempts to obscure what we're trying to do by the Labour Party and by the Honourable Lady. I think the best thing is to advise her constituents what to do to follow the guidance to get the virus down, and let's all do it together.
Let's head up to Middlesbrough with Simon Clark. Simon Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Levelling up will matter more than ever as we emerge from the pandemic next year. And I was delighted to see the first town deals announced last week, delivering transformative investment for places like Darlington. Will my right honourable friend prioritise rapid decision-making for those places like Middlesbrough and Loftus that have applications pending for this vital fund?
Yes, indeed, Mr. Speaker, and I congratulate him for lobbying for Middlesbrough in the way that he does. I can tell him that Tees Valley is already getting £126 million from the local growth fund. The devolution deal will mean £450 million extra for transport skills and employment, and Middlesbrough itself will get at least £500,000 from the Towns Fund, Mr. Speaker, thanks at least in part to his lobbying.
Speaker, and can I join the congratulations to you on your first year anniversary? Yeah. Private care homes such as St Martin's in my constituency of Liverpool Wavertree are closing due to under-occupancy, making them financially unviable. But moving people into new care settings, especially during a pandemic, is full of risk. With the winter care plan failing short, will the Prime Minister commit now to providing additional funding specifically for social care to help local authorities meet their statutory responsibilities and prevent further care home closures?
She's right to draw attention to the issue, Mr. Speaker, and in addition to the £600 million care home action plan that we announced earlier this year, we will be putting further funding into care homes in the short term, but also making sure that we have long-term reform of that sector. And as I said to the right honourable gentleman earlier, we will be bringing out guidance today, specific guidance to enable people to visit loved ones in the way that they should and they must.
Heading to Lincoln with Cole McCartney. Cole McCartney.
Thank you, Speaker. My right honourable friend and I share similar libertarian views, and I guess that some decisions he has taken for the country's common good were contrary to his personal creed and feelings. While those of us with higher political morals than Captain Hindsight on the benches opposite have sought to do our collective best during recent times, what does my right honourable friend believe are the views regarding anti-Semitism following the recent EHRC report that the current leader of the opposition, a knight of the realm no less, holds now? Does my right honourable friend believe they are any different to those he displayed when serving the member for Islington North?
Mr. Speaker, the only comment I would make on all that was that I was genuinely amazed that the leader of the Unite Union should make a remark of the kind that he did, and that the Labour Party should remain in receipt of funding from Unite or take no steps to dissociate themselves from that union after that remark. I did find it absolutely astonishing, Mr. Speaker.
Final question, Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and happy anniversary. This week, the chair of the Health Select Committee stated that centralised contact tracing is always going to be less effective than a locally driven model. And given the fact that in Wales, track and trace costs £32 a head, it's run by local authorities and works, whereas the English system costs £1,700 a head, it's run centrally and doesn't, when will the Prime Minister introduce a more effective track and trace system driven by local authorities?
Look, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to pretend that every aspect of NHS test and trace has worked in the way that I wanted it to, but it has, as I said earlier on, it has achieved some very considerable things. But what I think it has also done throughout the pandemic, from the get-go, it has worked with local authorities and with local people. And what we will be doing now, as we roll out the mass testing that I've described to the House in Liverpool and elsewhere, will be led by local people, and we will be working with those local authorities to deliver those programmes.
We now come... Point of order, Nusrat Ghani.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, may I seek guidance on the powers of this House to summon witnesses to attend select committee inquiries and answer questions on their businesses' involvement in UK matters. I ask this because there is a very real public concern about Disney, who made the film Mulan, amongst the Uyghur slave camps in Xinjiang, and are therefore implicated in the mass human rights abuses of the Uyghur people by the Chinese state and may be profiting from them. You may have thought that Disney would want to come in front of the Base Select Committee to explain their position, but Disney and its representative, Jan Kopen, a firm based in Hammersmith and with a substantial footprint in the UK, are refusing to attend. Can you advise what steps can be taken to ensure that Disney fulfil their obligations not only to Parliament but also to the public? Can you confirm that this House can require Disney to attend and that a refusal could be a blatant contempt of Parliament? And what should the committee do next, Mr. Speaker?
Can I first of all say I'm grateful to the honourable member for giving me notice of her intention to raise this matter. It is very important that select committees have access to witnesses to assist them in carrying out their important work, and I'm sure Representative of Disney will have heard what she's said. What I would say to Disney is they are a major corporation, they are good at communications, so I would expect them to reflect what they do as a business. If a witness refused to attend when invited into its open committees, to summon them formally. So as I say, they can be summoned formally. If a witness fails to appear when summoned, I would expect that that be reported to the House. Consideration could then be given to how that matter can be taken forward. But as I understand, that if the committee has not yet taken the first step, which only it can do, at this stage, therefore it is a matter for the chair of the committee. But as you know, with your good offices, I don't think it will rest here today. Point of order, Jeremy Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It has been raised on the floor of the House this week the suggestion that in the current pandemic we should have a special coronavirus Select Committee. I just thought it would be helpful for honourable members to know that the Science and Technology and Health and Social Care Committees are together embarking on a large inquiry into all aspects of the pandemic and all the lessons that need to be learned, and on the particular issue as to whether or not we should have lockdowns and what the scientific basis for those lockdowns are. We will be having a session later this month to which we will be inviting the Health and Social Care Secretary.
Can I once again say thank you for giving me notice of your question. As you know, and I would say it's not really a point of order for the Chair, what I would say is now on record, and quite rightly, you've made the point, and it does follow Monday's point of order, so what I don't want to is get into a debate between the two. But as you say, it is a matter for the House, not a matter for the Chair, and I think we'll leave it at that, but thank you for giving me notice. Right, in order to allow the safe exit of honourable members participating in this item of business and the safe arrival of those participating next, I'm suspending the House for 3 minutes. Order!